The small town of Willow Creek was known for its peaceful summers, days of endless sunshine and nights filled with the chorus of crickets. But this particular summer was different. The heat was unbearable, the nights unusually quiet, as if nature itself was holding its breath. 13-year-old Seth Miller was restless. His parents had taken him to their old family cabin near the edge of the woods for the summer break. Seth didn't mind the solitude during the day, but the nights were becoming unsettling. It was close to midnight when Seth sat by the window, looking out at the dark woods. The trees seemed to whisper in the hot breeze. Something about those woods made him feel watched. Suddenly, a distant scream tore through the night. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't human either. It was something in between. Seth froze, his heart pounding. He ran to his parents' room, but they were sound asleep, snoring lightly. No one else seemed to hear it. Maybe I'm imagining things, Seth muttered to himself. But deep down, he knew he wasn't. The next morning, Seth couldn't stop thinking about that eerie scream. He decided to investigate the woods behind the cabin while his parents were busy fixing breakfast. The trees loomed high above him, their trunks dark and scarred. After a few minutes of wandering, he came across deep claw marks on a tree, as if some wild animal had sharpened its nails there. But these marks were too high to belong to any animal Seth knew. His stomach tightened. "Dad?" Seth called when he returned. "Have you seen anything strange in these woods?" His father, Robert Miller, laughed. "Strange? It's just wildlife, Seth. Bears, maybe. But the claw marks are higher than me," Seth insisted. Robert shook his head, dismissing the boy's worry. "You're letting your imagination run wild." That night, Seth stayed awake, staring out the window. The woods were darker than ever. Around midnight, he saw movement between the trees, a tall, shadowy figure gliding silently. The sound came first, slow, crunching footsteps outside the cabin. Seth's breath caught. He peeked through the window and saw nothing, just the eerie stillness of the woods. Then, a knock, soft but deliberate, echoed on the cabin door. Knock, knock, knock. Seth grabbed his flashlight and tiptoed to the door, his heart thudding in his chest. "Mom? Dad?" he whispered, but they were asleep. He hesitated, then shone the flashlight through the window next to the door. For a moment, nothing. Then, a face. Pale, stretched, with black, hollow eyes. It grinned, showing teeth far too sharp for a human. Seth stumbled backward, choking on a scream. The next morning, Seth told his parents what he saw, but they laughed it off. "Nightmares," his mom said. Determined to prove he wasn't imagining things, Seth ventured back into the woods with his flashlight and a notebook, intending to write down every detail. The air was thick and heavy, the sunlight struggling to pierce the dense canopy. As Seth went deeper, he found something horrifying. A small, torn shoe, caked in dried blood. Seth dropped it and ran back to the cabin, trembling. "Someone is out there," he whispered to himself. "Something bad happened here." That night, Seth heard whispers. They weren't coming from inside the cabin but from the woods, drifting through the night air. The words were unintelligible, but the tone was sinister. He pressed his ear against the window, trying to listen. The whispers grew louder until they turned into a soft chant. Then he heard his name. Seth. Seth couldn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard his name whispered through the trees. Around 2 a.m., when the crickets suddenly went silent, he knew something was wrong. He looked toward the window. At first, he thought the glass reflected his own face. But then it smiled, a wide, unnatural grin that didn't belong to him. The pale face with black hollow eyes stared at him from outside. Seth screamed, stumbling back. His parents rushed in, switching on the light. "What's wrong?" his mother shouted, shaking him. There was someone outside the window. Seth stammered. Robert grabbed his rifle and went outside, but the woods were silent, still, and empty. There were no footprints by the window. Nothing but the eerie smell of damp earth. The next day, the police arrived in Willow Creek. A hiker had gone missing in the woods just a few miles from the Miller cabin. Officers were canvassing the area, asking locals if they'd seen anything suspicious. When they knocked on the Miller cabin's door, Seth blurted, "I saw something in the woods." The officer gave him a sharp look. "What did you see?" Seth hesitated. The memory of that pale face made his voice tremble. I don't know. But it wasn't human." The officers exchanged glances. "Stay indoors at night," one of them said gravely. "We'll be patrolling the area." By evening, a storm rolled in. Rain pelted the roof, lightning slashing the sky. Seth sat in the living room, clutching his flashlight, when he heard a faint scratching sound, like nails raking the wooden walls. Dad, listen. Seth whispered. Robert frowned and turned off the TV. The scratching grew louder, circling the cabin. Suddenly, a thud hit the door. The lights flickered, then went out. Through the lightning flash, Seth saw it, a tall, gaunt figure, its limbs unnaturally long, standing just beyond the porch, watching them. The next morning, they found strange symbols carved into the cabin door. Seth traced one with his finger. It felt burnt into the wood. What is this? His mother whispered, fear creeping into her voice. Robert tried to shrug it off. Probably kids playing pranks, he said, but his pale face betrayed his fear. Seth, however, remembered something. The shoe he found in the woods. The missing hiker. The whispers calling his name. He realized the thing outside wasn't random. It wanted him. That night, the storm worsened. The cabin shook under the wind. Suddenly, all the windows slammed shut on their own, as if invisible hands had closed them. Everyone, stay together, Robert commanded, loading his rifle. Seth clung to his mother. Then came the voice again, right outside the door. Seth. The door handle slowly turned. The door handle twisted violently, as if something was trying to break in. Robert aimed his rifle at the door, his finger trembling on the trigger. Stay back, he yelled. The cabin went silent. Then, with a deafening crack, the door burst open. But no one was there. Only the wind and rain swept inside, chilling the room. Seth's mother, Elaine, slammed the door shut again and bolted it. This isn't a prank, she whispered. Something's out there. The next morning, Seth noticed red stains leading away from the porch. He followed them cautiously into the woods. The trail led him to a clearing where the ground was torn apart as if something had dragged a body through the dirt. He crouched down, his breath shaky. That's when he heard it. Snap. A twig broke behind him. Seth spun around, and for a split second, he saw it again. The pale, hollow-eyed creature, standing between the trees, watching him. He ran back to the cabin, his lungs burning. That evening, the family's neighbor, an old man named Mr. Harris, stopped by the cabin. When Seth told him what he had seen, Harris's face turned grim. You shouldn't be here, Harris said. These woods, they're cursed. Years ago, a group of campers went missing here. Only one was found alive, babbling about a creature that comes during summer storms, calling children's names. Seth's stomach dropped. It's calling me, he whispered. Harris nodded. If it's chosen you, you must not answer it. Ever. That night, Seth woke to the sound of soft knocking on his window. Tap, tap, tap. He pulled the blanket over his head. Seth, the voice was barely a whisper, but it froze his blood. Summoning his courage, he peeked out from the blanket. The pale face was pressed against the glass, its black eyes staring straight into his soul. He screamed, and Robert burst into the room with his rifle. But by the time the light flicked on, the figure had vanished. Guided by those voices, Seth quietly slipped out into the woods. A moonless night stretched ahead, the forest pulses with nighttime insects. But Seth heard nothing but hushed breathing behind trees. He followed a faint glow deeper. A luminescent symbol burned into bark, identical to the mark on the front door. Every tree was marked. He realized, this wasn't just a boundary, it was a summoning. Then footprints appeared, from the symbol toward him. They were huge, elongated, badly clawed. The pattern matched the one from the missing camper story. Seth's skin pricked. He turned to run, but a whisper followed him. A sudden crash shattered the silence. The window in the kitchen exploded inward. A pale, clawed hand reached through, scraping against the counter. Seth screamed. Robert fired a shot. The thing screeched, an inhuman wail, and vanished into the trees. But Seth knew this wasn't over. It was hunting them, and it wasn't going to stop. At dawn, they ventured outside to check the damage. Near the shattered window, they found something that made Seth's stomach churn. A human skull, fresh and cracked, smeared with dark blood. It wasn't animal. It was human. Get inside, Seth, Robert said, his voice trembling. Don't look at it. That night, Seth heard the voice again, closer than ever. Seth, come to me. I'm waiting. Against his better judgment, he followed the sound outside, barefoot, the ground cold and wet beneath him. The moonlight lit a faint path into the woods. He walked as if in a trance until he saw it, the tall, pale figure standing between two trees, smiling. Who are you? Seth whispered, though his voice cracked. The thing tilted its head, bones cracking with the movement. I was here before your kind. This is my forest. You called me, and now, you will stay. Seth stumbled backward, but roots seemed to coil around his feet, trapping him.